I chose to become a fake friend just to gather evidence and protect myself from him. A few months ago, a man moved into the house across the street. On his very first day, I noticed he had set up a telescope in his window, and it was pointed straight at my bedroom. Right away, it felt wrong. My first interaction with him happened a few days later. He knocked on my door to introduce himself, and one of the first things he said to me was, "You're worth going to jail for." I froze. My blood went cold. The entire exchange made my skin crawl. I shut the door in his face, but he stood there waiting and knocked again until I reopened it. I warned him not to step inside. He just stared at me with this blank expression, and then turned around and walked away with a smile. No apology, no explanation. The moment I closed the door, I rushed to my bedroom window. Sure enough, the telescope was still aimed directly at me. I felt completely exposed. That night, I took a long, hot shower, hoping to calm myself down, but I couldn't relax. Every creak in the house, every distant sound outside had me on edge. The next day, I went to the police. I told them what I had seen, how it made me feel unsafe. I explained the creepy comment he made and how he kept that telescope aimed at my room. But they brushed it off. One officer asked if I might be imagining it. Another said it wasn't illegal to own a telescope and told me to come back when I had real proof. Even his inappropriate comment was dismissed as a bad joke. I left feeling ignored, defeated, and scared. A few days passed and things got worse. One night, as I was getting ready for bed, I looked out the window and saw him again, hunched over the telescope. But this time, his movements were different. They were more frantic. Then I realized what he was doing. I realized he was behaving in a disturbing, explicit way while watching me. Even when he realized I was watching, he didn't stop. It was like my fear fueled him. What happened next left me sick to my stomach. I ran to the bathroom and vomited. I couldn't sleep at all that night. I just lay awake, scared out of my mind, knowing that this wasn't going to stop. At sunrise, I went back to the police station. I told them everything. I pointed out the dark circles under my eyes, told them I hadn't slept. I explained that I was afraid he might break into my home. I even shared how my ex had stalked me in the past, how he'd shown up at my job, left notes at my door, followed me around. But again, they brushed it off. One officer told me I should move or get better curtains. Another repeated that unless I had evidence, there was nothing they could do. I realized then that if I didn't act, nobody would help me until it was too late. Weeks passed. The man from across the street kept getting bolder. It started with gifts left on my doorstep, flowers, chocolates, a book I had casually mentioned at a local cafe once. Then he began delivering them in person, always asking to hang out. I always made excuses. But one night he showed up with a small box, grinning like a child with a surprise. I found them together. They were in love, so I had to keep them together forever, he said. Inside the box were 2 dead frogs. He had preserved them himself and placed them in a shoebox lined with white paper. He called them Chris and Curtis. I forced a smile, but I felt sick. I managed to close the door before running to the bathroom to throw up again. This man wasn't just creepy, he was disturbed. And the telescope. It was still there, always pointed at my window. I often caught him watching. One night, he came over again, this time with a stuffed animal. His smile was even creepier than usual. That's when I knew if the police weren't going to help, I had to take matters into my own hands. It took courage, but I decided the only way to stop him was to play along. I figured if I pretended to be his friend, he wouldn't hurt me. He was too obsessed. I kept a careful distance, but gave him just enough attention to keep him from doing anything worse. One day, I invited him over for coffee. I knew my brother would be in town and had him on speed dial. When the man arrived, he tried to hug me. I stopped him and offered a handshake instead. We sat in the kitchen chatting. "I love your bedroom," he said. "You look even better up close." That confirmed it. He'd been watching me every day. A chill ran through me, but I just smiled and said thank you. At exactly 6 p.m., my brother called, giving me an excuse to end the visit. As I walked him to the door, I realized I didn't even know his name. "Joseph," he said, then added, "I enjoyed my time here with you, Mia." Hearing him say my name made my skin crawl. I felt like he had stolen something from me. Still, I stuck with the plan. The next week, he invited me over to watch a movie, Silence of the Lambs. It felt like a strange choice for a first movie, but I played along. Throughout the film, he kept glancing at me with that familiar stare the one men give you right before they try to make a move. I avoided eye contact. Each time I went over, we watched movies and ordered food. But I noticed something odd. He never let me see his bedroom. The door was always closed, always locked. One night after a movie, I pretended I needed to use the bathroom. I got up and walked toward the bedroom door. Before I could touch the handle, he grabbed my arm hard and twisted it. I flinched, frozen. He realized what he was doing and quickly let go. "The toilet doesn't flush properly," he said with a smile. "Maintenance is coming soon." I smiled back, nodded, and left as fast as I could. My arm ached, and so did my nerves. I had let things go too far. But now I was more convinced than ever that the answers I needed were behind that door. A few days later, I brought over a bottle of wine. He sat unusually close, letting his leg touch mine and making comments about how the alcohol made things feel more personal. When his hand brushed my knee, I tensed up, fighting the instinct to pull away. I excused myself to get more wine and discreetly slipped something into his drink. When I came back, my heart was pounding. He drank it without hesitation. Slowly, his words started to slur and his eyelids grew heavy. He mumbled about lying down, about how long he had waited for this night. He tried to undress me clumsily and desperately, but passed out before he could. I eased him onto the couch, then stood up, heart racing. This was my only shot. I walked to his bedroom door. It was locked as always. I checked the kitchen, the drawers, the living room, nothing. I didn't want to touch him again, but I had no choice. I reached into his pockets. No key. Just his wallet, a vape, and a pack of gum. Then tucked between the bills in his wallet, I found it. I opened the door. The door creaked open, and what I saw inside Joseph's bedroom knocked the air out of my lungs. The walls were covered in images of me. Some were clearly taken through his telescope. Others were candid shots from places I hadn't even realized he had followed me to the cafe near my apartment and the bookstore I liked, even the local park where I used to take morning walks. But the worst ones were from inside my own home. Pictures of me brushing my hair asleep in bed, folding laundry in my living room. He had been watching me for months, maybe longer, and I had never known. There were also drawings, disturbing sketches of my face and body sometimes, with hearts around them, sometimes paired with his name. On a shelf, I found items I thought I had misplaced over the past few months. A scarf, one of my socks, a keychain from my old purse, a lip balm I hadn't seen in weeks. These had been in his possession all along. He had even kept torn-out pages from my mail. Magazine subscriptions, a postcard my cousin sent me from Italy. Pieces of my life stolen and placed carefully like trophies. In the center of the room was a corkboard pinned with more photos and handwritten notes. Some read like diary entries. Others sounded like fantasies or letters he never sent. It was a shrine. No other word fits. I was the focus of his entire world. I took out my phone and started photographing everything. I moved through the room, carefully documenting every wall, every item, every piece of evidence that proved what he had been doing to me. My hands were trembling. I felt like I was going to throw up, but I couldn't stop. I knew this was my only chance to gather proof. I had come this far, and I wasn't leaving without what I needed. I left the house silently, my heart still racing. Joseph was still unconscious on the couch, his head tilted to the side, mouth slightly open, completely unaware of what I had just discovered. The next morning I went back to the police. This time they didn't question me. I sat down and showed them the photos. One by one I went through the images of the walls, the stolen items, the notes. Their faces changed as they looked at the pictures. No more blank stares or forced smiles. They knew now. The same officer who had dismissed me when I first came in looked down at the photos for a long time before finally saying, "We failed you. I'm sorry. What you did getting this evidence made all the difference." I was told that Joseph had a prior incident on record. His ex-girlfriend had filed stalking charges against him years ago, but nothing ever came of it. He had slipped through the cracks. No one had followed up, and no one had warned anyone else. But now, they had undeniable proof. Detectives got involved. They prepared a warrant and made plans to arrest him later that day. That afternoon, I stood across the street and watched as officers knocked on his door. I could see his confusion at first, and then the panic. They cuffed him and led him out of the house. As they walked him to the car, he looked up and saw me. His expression wasn't angry, it was hurt. Like he had been betrayed by someone he trusted. I didn't feel fear anymore. I didn't even feel rage. I felt relief. At the station, I explained how I'd gotten into his apartment. I told them about the fake friendship I had carefully maintained, how I had invited him over for coffee, how he had brought gifts like a stuffed bear and a box containing 2 dead frogs he'd preserved and named. I told them how I'd used that connection to buy time and build a plan. I explained everything, the wine, the sleeping aid, the moment I slipped into his bedroom to uncover the truth. They were shocked, but they understood why I did it. One detective told me, "You shouldn't have had to go through this. But you were brave enough to do what needed to be done." Joseph was charged with multiple counts of stalking, unlawful surveillance, and harassment. The court later added breaking and entering charges based on the photos taken inside my home. He was sentenced to 7 years in a state facility, followed by mandatory psychological treatment. Update. It's been over a year now since Joseph was arrested and taken away. On paper, the story's over. But trauma doesn't follow legal timelines. It lingers. After everything happened, I quit my job. I couldn't sleep in that house anymore. The street itself triggered panic attacks. One night I packed a few things and left. I didn't even tell my landlord. I lived out of my car for a while, too scared to rent a place, constantly looking over my shoulder. Eventually, I moved to a new state. I found a quiet little town and took a job that's less demanding than my last, but it pays the bills. I don't go out much anymore. I don't date. I don't make small talk with strangers. There are still nights when I wake up in a cold sweat, convinced someone is watching me through the window. Every doorbell feels like a threat. I installed extra locks and a camera, but nothing ever feels like enough. I've tried therapy. It helps, but it's a long road. What Joseph didn't just invade my privacy, it stole my sense of safety. It made me question how people see me. It made me wonder how many others are living in fear, like I was dismissed by police, told to get thicker curtains or move somewhere else. I share this now, not for sympathy, but as a warning. Trust your instincts. If something feels off, it probably is. Keep records. Document everything. And if the people who are supposed to help you won't find a way to protect yourself, I'm not proud of everything I did. I wish the system had worked the way it should have. But I'm glad I trusted myself. I'm glad I acted. Joseph may be behind bars, but the damage he caused still echoes through my life. Still, I survived. I fought for myself when no one else would. That's something no one can take from me. Thank you for listening to today's stories. If you enjoyed listening, please like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. Also, leave a comment below to share your thoughts on what happened. Take care.